On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, the left brain versus the right brain. Why the music industry needs blockchain technology. Dash is the privacy-focused digital currency that offers transactions with instant confirmations. Its unique decentralized decision-making and self-funding system make it an ideal choice as a stable and secure digital cash. Click the link in the video description to learn more. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains. I am your host, Chris Coney. Today is the 25th of January 2017. So let us begin today's episode in earnest. For the cryptocurrency prices, we turn to coinmarketcap.com. We have Golem as the biggest loser of the day. After a couple of good runs, a couple of days on the trot, Golem is now in the 15th position as the most capitalized coin, but has shaved 7.47% of its value. As we've been saying, the Golem system is like says here, decentralized worldwide supercomputer, but not in the same way as Ethereum. It's not really meant to run decentralized apps in the same way for developers. It's meant so that it's a distributed computing platform that can rent out that power basically to all these things that are on screen here. Machine learning and businesses and science and cryptography and all that kind of stuff. It's just collecting computing power from the crowd and then somehow monetizing that or renting it out to big businesses or big projects that need that kind of computing power. Conversely, we have Ardor as the biggest winner of the day. It's not featured much recently because it was just outside the top 20, but now it's slipped into the top 20 and sits at 18th position as the most capitalized coin and has gained 8.2% of its value in the last 24 hours. Now, the Ardor system describes itself as blockchain as a service. And it's talking about utilizing the NXT blockchain to allow you to create a child chain. So say if you wanted your own blockchain, rather than having to mess about with all of the bespoke programming and all that kind of stuff, this is blockchain as a service. So they're going to provide you with a service to set up a blockchain for you that's sort of backed by the NXT network. So I've never actually heard of child chains before. I've heard of side chains, but it's not such a leap in imagination to understand what a child chain is, given that it's called a child's chain. It will be a child of a parent, and the parent being the NXT blockchain. And like it says here, child chains won't need to worry about common issues when creating a blockchain, such as securing it with enough nodes. So that would often be a problem. If I launch my own blockchain, how do I get people to run copies of it? How do I get people to mine it? All that sort of stuff, which is why blockchain as a service could be a damn fine idea. So that's all for the cryptocurrency prices. Let's take a look at the Bitcoin price before we get into the news. Beginning as we always do with the US dollar price in Bitcoin on bitcoinwisdom.com, looking at the Bitstamp price feed. Now, if you watched yesterday's episode and heard my analysis, I was looking at a trade to the upside. If I'd have put that trade on, it would have been a loser. Now, the other thing I didn't mention the other day because I didn't want to get into it is this is the time to mention stop losses. When I or anybody does an analysis like I did yesterday or every day, and then sort of speculate on what's going to happen, when it's time to put some money on the table, you actually place the trade. But at the same time, I would never place a trade and just leave it there, right? Before you enter a trade, you really should look at your exit, both in terms of profit and loss. What that means is that yesterday I was coming to a conclusion that if I buy at $900.17, which it was at the time when I recorded that episode, I would go into the trade at that. I would buy at that price in the hope that 900 would hold and it would then go back up again, bouncing off that $900 support line. However, like I say, that's not guaranteed. So you have to be prepared with a contingency plan. And the contingency plan is if my analysis turns out to be wrong and my support line that I'm relying on breaks, what am I going to do? And you do not wait until that happens before you figure that out. You do that before you press the buy button. And this is what a stop loss is for. So yesterday, if I'd have placed that theoretical trade, I'd have said, right, buy at $900.17. However, if it all goes pear-shaped and that $900 breaks, then automatically sell, i.e. close out the trade at a given price. And again, I'd do technical analysis to figure out exactly where that was, but let's say that was $895. That would mean, worst case scenario, my analysis turns out to be not a great representation of reality. $900 breaks, as it has done here, and then as soon as the price gets to $895, my broker or my exchange would automatically execute my orders and take that trade off the table. So I would be cutting my losses. That is the key. That's why they call it a stop loss. So you don't just leave it there, because if I walk away from the computer and it goes down to like 800 and 700 and 600, it just sits there and it'll drain all the money out of my account and I'm just riding it all the way to the bottom. I would never ever do that. So you should never put a trade on without simultaneously placing a stop loss, which is the contingency plan in case something goes wrong. You cut your losses as soon as possible. And that's why I talk about consistency, is that you're gonna lose, right? It's just a statistical probability that you're gonna lose some trades. The key to making money from trading is not to avoid losing money, it's to make sure that you make enough on the winners to recoup all your losses and earn an overall profit. But anyway, all this stuff is coming in my upcoming How to Trade Bitcoin course. So in terms of the news today, I've turned to cointelegraph.com. I'm going to skip the yuan price analysis today because I've got quite a bit to say about this. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I felt like a bit of a change of pace today. With the Bitcoin price causing a lot of chaos recently, with the People's Bank of China doing their thing, and then with the traffic jam on the Bitcoin network that still hasn't cleared, I wanted a break, at least for a day. So we're going to talk about blockchain technology as it relates to the music industry today. Now, the music industry has been taking a beating for, I'd say, decades, ever since music became digital. And when I say a beating, I just mean disruption. And before things have even had a chance to settle down in the world of digital music, along comes blockchain technology and begins a whole new phase of disruption. So this article is entitled Managed Chaos: Why the Music Industry Needs Blockchain. Well, I'm going to pick up on that in a second, but let us begin with this first opening bit. It says the music industry has lived through several so-called revolutions. However, rather paradoxically, the music industry has never changed that essentially. At its core, its relationship is with artists' contracts, payments, licensing, and copyrights. I like this article already. Now, I had a good chat with my patrons the other day while they were attending some blockchain events or other, and they pointed out that there's this state that most people are in. I would describe it as a mild state of panic. So it's almost as if they know blockchain technology is going to be as big as the internet, if not bigger, but they're not quite sure how, and they don't want to be left behind. And thus we arrive at the source of this mild panic. It's basically the fear of missing out, or FOMO, as it's known. Now, I was permanently cured of FOMO when I discovered what principles were. You know, natural laws, high-level patterns that govern the way the world works. These principles and patterns that no one invented, no one can change them, and they're all self-evident with only the minimum amount of observation. Now you could say, well, how is that even possible? Well, I'll just say, look at mathematics. How come mathematics was already here before people had language and before we knew what the hell math was? Measurements and pi and the phi ratio and Fibonacci and all this sort of stuff. That's all that math is built into nature. Doesn't matter what color you are, what language you speak, what your heritage is. Mathematics is an objective language that is built into nature, transcends humanity, and is very, very useful. So similarly, there are other natural laws like maths that also govern the world. Now, how this applies to the music business is that the author of this article has brilliantly separated the surface level changes in the music business and identified the underlying principles that have never changed. So artists' contracts, payments, licensing, and copyrights. This is the music business in essence. not the music business, right? So let's move on to this next bit. Imogen Heap, artist and founder of Mycelia for Music, an early adopter of blockchain, says at the Slush conference in Helsinki. Hang on, before I read that quote, the author has done something silly here. It says Imogen was an early adopter of blockchain. Oh yes, I was an early adopter of internet, you know. I was also an early adopter of car. And don't get me started on computer. I adopted computer before people had even heard of it. Doesn't make any friggin' sense when you say it like that, does it? Anyway, moving on. So the quote is, "This is the state of affairs in the United Kingdom. This is how money gets down to me as an artist. I'm right at the end of the chain." No pun intended. "I am the first person to upload the song and the last person to receive the money. And often it takes up to 2 years for that to happen." Close quote. Well, I mean, this is something I've just thought of. Well, if Imogen is in control of where she uploads it, why upload it to somewhere where you're the last person to get paid? Just a thought. So then she goes on to show this diagram, and she splits the whole industry into like radio, streaming, download, and then direct. And then in each case, she shows how the money is distributed. So then it also says just below that, it says, "Music is one of the most complicated copyright environments with one of the worst data practices." Now that's not a good recipe, is it? Now the reason music is complicated in terms of rights management is because it's made up of so many components. Just think of how many people are involved in a song or making one. If someone plays an instrument on that song, well, that's technically a rights holder. So someone else may have written the lyrics, another person performs the lyrics, another person produced the song, another person mixed and mastered it, and on and on and on. And all this should be stored in a database, no doubt about it. But like it says here in the article, record labels have typically failed to develop such systems. And considering blockchain technology is, in essence, a decentralized database system, we may have a winner. So let's skip right down to the blue bit here. It says, currently, the information related to music compositions and songs is located in over 5,000 individual publisher-owned databases. It is certainly not an efficient system. And this is the paradox of blockchain technology. Centralization is seen as like an evil in the world of Bitcoin and blockchain technology, but centralization isn't inherently evil, it has its benefits. In this case, we want all the music rights data centralized so that it can be kept up to date and in one place, so everyone that accesses it can also access it in the same place. But a blockchain puts all that data in one place, but it does it in a decentralized way. The data is centralized in one database, but control over that database is decentralized. So here's another quote in purple. It says, "The world is turning to streaming entirely. In a significant amount of cases, the streaming service cannot pay because it's unknown who to pay. There is no easily accessible rights registry." Close quote. Now that's a good one. Spotify gets a lot of flack because of how little they pay out to rights holders. But like it says here though, this isn't entirely the fault of Spotify because sometimes they don't have access to accurate information on who they should be paying. So, I mean, that's not really their job. That's the job of the labels and the artists and so on. Spotify is essentially a technology company that provides a streaming service, right? Anyway, moving on here, it says, for this particular reason, the Open Music Initiative was brought together essentially by academic institutions, starting with Berklee College of Music and Berklee Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship. There are well over 100 companies that have signed up, including all the major labels, all the major streaming services, with the exception of Apple and significant publishers. And I'll give you one guess why they are probably not that interested in this project. Now, one thing that does bother me about this is that the established artists have kind of gotten used to the labels, the big labels, taking care of the business side of stuff for them. You know, they're not used to controlling their own destiny, not in this way. I would rather attack this problem from the other end, like a grassroots thing, by having new artists publish all their new music on a blockchain-based music platform. and then have their fans begin consuming it in that way. And then within one generation, that would become the way that things are in the music business. And then labels would have been completely bypassed. You wouldn't have to get their buy-in, you wouldn't have to do anything. So in conclusion then, the big music companies, much like the banks, are not just going to sit there and watch blockchain technology take them out of business. Unfortunately, I would say the music business is much more used to this kind of chaos than the banking industry is. I mean, if you think about it, the two industries of banking and music operate from opposite sides of the brain. The banking industry is numbers, logic, and very left brain, while the product of the music industry is art, creativity, and very right brain. And maybe the key to the evolution of both of these industries lies in borrowing ideas from each other. So thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Please leave me a comment below with some feedback and get subscribed. And please support the Cryptoverse and boost cryptocurrency adoption by going to cryptoversity.com/podcast and becoming a patron. From as little as $10 a month, you can secure Cryptoversity's future, get unlimited access to all Cryptoversity courses, and access a private patrons-only chat group where you get direct access to me. That is all for today, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.